Welcome everybody to another episode of Meet the Expert. Today I'm very happy to be recording from the Western Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh VMUG, and I have AJ Kuftic with me.
Hi,
AJ. AJ, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is AJ Kuftic. I'm an architect for a large health insurance company here in Pittsburgh, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little about how I've known you for a while, especially from the vExpert Slack. So one thing I always like to do is starting with, how did you get into IT? Because I don't know that story.
I don't think I've ever really told that story. I got into IT because I was really into computers, and then I found out that I was really good at fixing them. And so I actually started doing IT for my high school while I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
So weirdly, I got paid to stay after school and fix computer labs and that sort of stuff. I built out wireless networks and built out computers and fixed PCs, and that took me pretty much through college and internships, mostly because, I don't know, I thought things through. And then once we kind of figured that out, then it was pretty straightforward too.
And when you were choosing, you mentioned college, what did you go to college for? Like, did you actually go for computer stuff? Or?
Yeah, I actually did. Shout out to Robert Morris University. Go Colonials, go Bobby Moe. I went there because they were a program that had management information systems, because I don't know why I thought this when I was younger, but I realized that there was like an inherent need to know business things about IT, right?
You probably had fixed enough computers to know that you didn't want to just fix computers.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was the fact that there was like, you need to understand how that fits into a business. So this degree included a whole bunch of business classes. Like I had to learn managerial accounting and finance and marketing and all these other things that had nothing to do with computers at all. And because I had to learn all that, I started to figure out like, oh, hey, when somebody comes to me and is like looking for a return on investment, I know what they're talking about. And I know like why they're looking for those things and why balance sheets matter and how offsets work and those sorts of things to actually make the cool stuff that I want to do happen.
You kind of knew a lot about it going there.
I knew the technical stuff. Like the technical stuff changed. Like what's super funny is when kids go to college. So if anybody under the age of 21 is watching this, good for you. But try to learn how to learn. That's the one thing that most people never really get. They go to college and they learn C, or they learn Java, or they learn how to code, or they learn how to build networks, and that sort of stuff. And then give it 5 years and all that's going to be ruined. Or you're going to be supporting the same old stuff for the next 25 years of your life, and you're going to never learn anything new, and it won't be that fun. So, So what's funny is that when we're talking about like doing all this new stuff, doing all this cloud stuff, Robert Morris actually started a mainframe program 2 years ago.
Mainframe program?
Yep. It's called Enterprise Operating Systems, and they started this to bring in to get kids up to speed on mainframe things, not because mainframe is hip and cool, but because all the people who are like the super knowledgeable people on mainframes are all retiring.
Yeah.
And all the companies that are in the city of Pittsburgh, a lot of them are still running mainframes because it's very difficult to get away from a mainframe once you're on it. And so they have to get more talent. And in order to do that, they have to reach into the colleges. They have to reach into an oncoming talent pool. We have Pitt, CMU, Duquesne, Robert Morris, Carlo, Chatham. Those are the like 6 big schools, and that doesn't include the multiple Penn State campuses that are here. That doesn't include the community colleges, CCBC, CCAC. So there's a lot of young talent, a lot of young educational opportunities here. Let's get some new blood into some of these aging organizations. Plus, if you're under the age of 30 in a mainframe, you will get paid. So.
All right, so you came out of college. What was your first job? I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time because I know you've been your career is actually pretty cool. But let's touch the highlights. Like, okay, this is what I did, and I learned this to go here and this and that. So tell me a little about that. Especially, we're talking career. We're talking people doing stuff, and I know that you are in a very good position now. You're in a very enviable job role where you actually can see a lot of stuff. So let's talk about your experience that led you to that.
So I started as an intern. So I like to remind myself from time to time that the whole reason I have a career is because I didn't sleep in on a Saturday morning. So I had a professor at Robert Morris. I keep coming back to that. I was not planning on this being the Robert Morris shout out hour, but here it is. I had a professor who said, hey, you should go apply for this internship at this manufacturing company in the city. You can guess which one. And I said, you know, I really don't want to do that. I really like what I'm doing. Because at the time I had like a pretty all right job doing like PC stuff at Robert Morris, and I was going to try and work my way up through there. And he was like, no, I really think you should go apply for this internship. I was like, but the test is on a Saturday morning. I don't really want to do it. And he said, AJ, you're an idiot if you don't go take this test. Because at the time there was this math test you had to take, and it was all abstract algebra because they were trying to recruit programmers. And so I'm like, fine, I'll go take this stupid test. He goes, the worst thing you do is fail, and you woke up early on a Saturday. And I was like, all right, fine. I passed, and it turned into an internship, which turned into the first 5 years of my career. So I started as a desktop intern, did more desktop stuff, was real good at it, and then they decided to move me into a network and server admin role, which is where I learned about networking and how Layer 2 works, how VLANs work, how DHCP works,
that's a big change. No, that's a first big change.
That's a huge change.
That goes from desktops to server networking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I learned about Active Directory, how DNS really works, and all of these things. And I had people early on in my career who took the time to teach me things and spent more time in front of whiteboards with me than they really probably should have. And I learned more in the 2 years in that internship than I learned in the 5 years I was in college. I was in 5 years because I got a master's degree, not because I didn't graduate in 4. I did not party. I promise you that. My student loans prove it. But these whole things about building out, like how to properly build a system. This was a manufacturing facility. That was the other thing. I was doing this inside of an actual steel mill, a real live working steel mill. So these were production critical machines that if they went down, the company started losing money instantly. Like they were paying people to be there and not actually work. And they really hated that. So I got a lot of opportunities to build server things and networks and replace things and fix things in weird locations and come up with solutions for really odd problems, which is a really fun thing to get to do when you're 23. And it turned into, that was my first foray into VMware. And I built out my first design because some developer at one of our groups came over and said, have you guys heard about this VMware thing? Because this might be a way for us to not have to take outages from time to time. Turns out we still had to take outages from time to time, but they didn't want to, and they figured that this might be a way to not do that. So that was like the first 5 years of my career. I moved on to a different company where I had to take on a mature-ish VMware environment where, you know, I was upgrading from vSphere 3.5 to 4. I was there for a little bit, learned a lot more about databases than I ever thought I'd ever learn in my life or cared to learn about in my life. And then moved into a partner role where I got to see, you know, dozens of customers and what they do and how they do things and why they do things and why regulations are important.
And that for me has been so I moved from a customer to a vendor role where I walk into other people's environments, and I learn so much because everybody does things just a bit differently. They have a different business use case. So you get that repertoire in your head spans, right, with all these things.
Right, and when you start to see how people do different things, and more specifically why they do things differently, you realize, oh, well, we used to do this at my old place. We used to do it this way. Well, why did you do it that way? Well, the reason we did it that way was because it was simpler, or we did it that way because we had this very specific regulation that required us to do things in a certain order. Or we just didn't want to deal with it later, so we did it at this point in this process. And you start to see and figure out why you want to do things certain ways. And sometimes you learn to not fight people on certain things. That was something I learned in being in a partner where I was traveling around to a bunch of different places. And there would be times where I would go, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? You know, ABC, why are you doing ABQF? Like, why are you doing it that way? And they would say, well, Q has to come before F because some auditor wants us to do Q before F. We don't really have a choice. And that's when you go, okay, I'm not going to fight you on it. We'll do Q before F. Like, those are the sorts of things where you start to, when you start to branch out, you start to see things. And this is why I tell people to try and network and try and understand why people do things certain ways or how people do things certain ways. Because if you don't, you just get stuck in, well, we do A, B, and C, and if you don't do A, B, and C, you're doing it wrong. This is IT. There's 15 different ways to do things, at least. So you just happen to do one of the 15. So if you're doing one of the 15, what about option 12? Does that make it better for you? Does that make it easier?
No, you're not growing, honestly, if you're not looking at different things. So.
Right.
So that gave you that architects?
Yeah. So I had to, there were times where I had to kind of do some architecture on the fly, I guess you could call it. We were not a terribly big VAR. Like, we were dealing with mostly, medium to commercial customers. So, but we would still have to come in and design things. People were paying us to design things for them and do a lot of things so that it was done correctly. And so you had to learn the correct way to do things. There is a vendor correct way to do things, and so you kind of have to learn the vendor correct way to do things. But in learning that, you had to learn how to design things and architect things on the fly. And this is where I took the VCAP design course, or the exam, and passed it, and that's when I realized, like, well, actually, I might actually know what I'm doing here.
Okay.
I may actually have a thing that I understand on how to do this. So that was kind of a cool opportunity for me to kind of understand the whole scenario, understand whole designs and like business objectives. Like, why are you doing this whole thing? Like, why are you designing this gigantic VDI environment? Or why are you designing this? Why are you building one big SQL server? Why aren't you chopping that up into multiple smaller ones? Or, what is your outage time frames? What are your SLAs? Those sorts of things that people don't think about when they're just like, oh, I'm going to connect server A to server B and make them talk. Those sorts of overall design things, and that's what these companies were paying us to be there for. That led me to do a lot more architecture things than just pure building things.
And that led you to the job that when I met you, right?
Yeah. So I met Ariel now, having moved into a more customer-facing role. So I went from a partner side back to a customer side for mostly family reasons. I like being home now. When you're a partner and you're traveling around a lot, it gets old after a while. So being home was super great, and I'm really happy that I'm in the role I am now. I get to being in a bigger company, being kind of an architect at a bigger company lets me do a lot more fun things all the time versus, okay, you're going to go do the same install 4 or 5 times in a row.
And I also heard that you invest a lot of time up-training the people that work with you, your engineers.
Yes.
And now I get also why you also think this is important, because you experience it.
Yeah. People took the time with me, so I want to take the time for them, and I'm trying to pay it forward, because I know that right now one of the guys that I've taken a lot of time with is actually speaking at this VMUG right now, mostly because he told me to. But it's those sorts of things where I take the time to train, I take the time to do these sorts of things, because you can get caught in the trap. You can get caught in the, okay, let's go check the ticket queue. Okay, these people need more storage. Okay, we've got to build this server.
That's my job.
That's my job, right? And I want people to be excited about what they're doing. Now I know that not everybody's going to be excited. I know that this is not that some people actually are doing this because it's a job, right? And they're not doing it because it's like something they really truly enjoy doing. I truly enjoy doing what I do. But it's those sorts of things where I want people to learn. I'm willing to take the time and whiteboard things out and draw stuff up. I'll throw up a quick Skype meeting to say hey, let's talk about what we're doing right now and why that's important, or why these things happen. And I do that mostly because I want other people to know it. Yeah. Because I don't want to be the lone person who knows this one thing, and because I know this one thing, I'm the person who gets the phone call when it breaks. I want other people to know it too. For selfish, I don't want to be called reasons. Yeah. Hashtag don't call Carl. But I also want those people to be empowered to know those things, so that they don't feel like, well, I don't know, I got to go ask AJ if we can do this.
Such an information hoarder. That's not how it works.
Right. You don't want to be a hoarder, because these things change all the time. And if you're an information hoarder, you're the person who's keeping these sorts of things to themselves, then you are a single point of knowledge.
Well, and also you're never going to stop doing that because you're the only person that can deal with it.
Right. Oh, AJ's got to go do this thing. AJ wants to go do other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? AJ's trying to look this way, and if he constantly has to look this way all the time, he doesn't ever get to look this way. And so AJ wants to do things, but also I want the other members of my team to do that thing too, and think about stuff overall and try to look forward, and maybe they see something that I'm missing.
Yeah, exactly. Because and start having those discussions at a higher level, right?
Right, because if I'm seeing things or if I'm not catching things because I'm busy doing other things, they might say like, hey, we're doing this thing over here, we don't need to do that thing anymore, we should probably get rid of that. Okay, cool. Maybe there's a reason we don't do that, like Oracle licensing for a cluster. We have this cluster, this tiny cluster for a certain reason. Why? Probably Oracle licensing, or there's some sort of application reason why we have it. Like Link needs one-to-one CPU because you're doing VoIP or something like that. Those are the sorts of things where, oh, that's the reason we're doing that, not.
And I also find having those conversations where the people are getting better and better and better makes work much more enjoyable.
Yeah, because then you actually want to talk about stuff. You actually want to build stuff where they say, oh, hey, I just saw this new feature in vSphere 6.5. I want to try that. Okay, cool. Go build a lab. Yeah. And then provide those opportunities too. Don't just like hold people back. Don't just sit and say, no, you can't do that. You need to go add more storage to this server because there's a ticket that just came in. Like, unless it's pressing, no, you can add that 5 gigs later. It'll be fine. So, like, and then the other thing is, when new builds, when new opportunities come up, get as many people involved from the jump as you can, right? So we brought in our first HCI platform. I had every member of my team either on a Skype meeting or in the room when we were standing it all up. Cool. Because I wanted those people to understand that process.
Yeah, to see it, to remember it.
To see it, to remember it, to understand why we did certain things from the beginning.
And it also feels good that even though you're not supposed to be the expert, you're brought in so you can see it. I mean, it's cool. We're all geeks in the end, so we all want to geek out.
And I also wanted those people to be there so they felt included.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, oh, AJ did this thing. I don't want it to be AJ did this thing. I want it to be, oh, hey, these people really wanted to be there, and they really did this, and that was great.
Very cool. So now you mentioned something that I think is super important, especially at the Pittsburgh BMO, the Western Pennsylvania meeting. You mentioned Don't Call Carl. Carl is one of our members here at the Pittsburgh B community, and he is super happy to hear that AJ is soon to be launching a podcast. I'm kidding. I've been forcing him to.
Ariel does this thing. For those of you who've watched a number of these, and he's asked a number of very nice people very nice questions. This is what happens to his actual friends. And he does these sorts of things where he's like, hey, you're starting a podcast. It's not a, hey, you should. It's, no, you are. And I don't know if this is in a book you read where you just like speak things into the universe.
No. So here's the thing. AJ told me that he used to manage a podcast internally at another company. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I did a podcast. It was called Between Two Racks. And anybody from my old company who watches this probably listened to at least one of the episodes, if not more. And it started because we had, I was just like a professional services engineer. So we usually got stuff like not long after it had come out, but we would get stuff like after it had come out, and we would go do training. We never got any of the cool NDA stuff. We never got to talk about that, or like, why are they doing that, or hey, I'm really looking forward to that. It was like, oh, hey, this thing came out, and then somebody who was in all these NDA meetings like, oh yeah, they talked about that with us about 6 months ago. And I'm like, well, where were we? So I said, screw this, I'm starting a podcast. So it was all hosted internally. I recorded Skype calls, which is how everybody records podcasts. That's the behind the scenes, behind the curtain thing. We're just all recording Skype calls. And so I recorded Skype calls with people who were in these NDA meetings. Because our entire company was under a big, gigantic NDA, so we were allowed to talk about this, but the whole point was, I want this information to be discussed and then disseminated. Like, hey, what's coming? What have you guys seen? Where do you think this is all going? And it turned into this really cool thing where it allowed people to kind of hear what's coming or hear why they should be excited about something versus just like, oh, hey, I heard VMware's going to do this thing with AWS. I don't understand what that's going to be. And then we would have somebody. This was before this stuff, so this is not that long. This was longer than that ago. But it was things like, hey, when is vSAN getting encryption? And we would talk about those sorts of things, or hey, why doesn't this happen? And we would, we would have internal. It started as just all internal people, and then at one point we had a conference where I actually interviewed other people. Like I interviewed Robinson Rivera and Alan Renouf, Jonas Roslin from EMC Code. He was there at the time.
So you had the vendors come into your company and have that and record the podcast for your internal consumption. That's pretty good.
At the time, no, it was. I just got lucky and I had them in one place. This was for Vero Madness, now Serious Madness, which was like kind of a. What I call this?
Internal geek out?
No, it wasn't even internal. It was for our customers. Okay. So we did like a tiny little baby VMUG, VMworld sort of thing, but just for our customers. We would have EMC and VMware, Cisco, all these other companies come in. And so I brought in, I basically grabbed these guys. I was like, hey, can we do like a quick 20-minute, 30-minute interview for these things? This may sound familiar. Except all of mine was for NDA for internal consumption, and I put it up on our Box site, and it turns out that Box actually has a media player built into it.
Oh,
so if you pointed the media player at the folder, you could listen to the episodes in order.
Very nice.
Which was kind of cool. But it was like, hey, let's do this thing, and it cost. I got a microphone. That was about it. Yeah. That was the extent of the expenses that were around this.
And I saw the opportunity. I'm saying, you have all this experience. We have. And you and I have a shared love of community.
Yes.
You were the one that helped me come to Pittsburgh.
That's true. And I'm the reason he's here now. Sorry, New York.
And both you and I know that we can help this community get better and be more vibrant. I think this is an amazing community that not a lot of people know about. So I'm pushing him to start this podcast because I want him to lead this effort to have Pittsburgh tech talk, people knowing each other, people interviewing each other, so that we can get to know all get to know each other and be able to talk to each other and share, right?
Right.
But what happened yesterday during the little hack was amazing. These guys figured that they could have a yinzer accent, and if you're not from Pittsburgh, you don't know what a yinzer is. But a yinzer is a Pittsburgh native. Yeah. And these guys cracked so many.
We broke it. We made a lot of funny haha jokes in a yinzer accent, and since this is for way wider consumption than just Pittsburgh, I'm not doing it. But here's the deal. If this video gets 100 retweets, I will start a podcast.
Done. I'm done.
I have to figure out how
can people find you on Twitter?
At AJ Kuftic. He'll tweet it with my name on it. So at AJ Kuftic. Hopefully he'll put it in some sort of cryon.
Yeah.
Chiron? No, Chiron. It's Chiron, I think. And just add AJ Kuftic.
100 retweets of the tweet.
Do 100 retweets of this video.
The tweet will be exactly in the video comments. I need you to retweet it. This will be the best podcast ever.
He says that. I don't know if he really knows that. Then I'm going to have to figure out a recording schedule and stuff.
Thank you so much. Literally, I've always admired you. And I really thank you taking the time to help whoever's coming in. Like you said, whoever's thinking about going to college, whoever's going through their career, you've talked on a lot of little attitudes that really help people get better and be able to provide for their families with better jobs and stuff. But I also appreciate everything you've been doing for the community at large, and especially here in Pittsburgh. So,
thank you very much.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, man. That's it.